Happy Tuesday, everybody. Aetherdrift just dropped on Magic the Gathering Arena. And so at the beginning of the set, I always like to throw out some brews, some ideas, just to kind of bounce ideas off of one another. I didn't build anything from scratch. I do think there's a couple of archetypes that are going to be new, like blue-red or Is It. The cycling discard deck looks pretty good. There's a couple of them that I wanted to get more in depth with, but I just didn't have time. But I do think we've got some interesting cards that are going to slot into some of the archetypes that already exist. So this one is Azorius Artifacts or Azorius Convoke. It doesn't really have the Convoke shell in it anymore, but you're using the Novice Inspector, Spyglass Siren, Mockingbird to create a whole bunch of little artifacts to make your Regal Bunnycorn bigger. This archetype has been around for a little bit in Foundations, running the Leyline Axe, and I think that the cards that we got that are interesting for this archetype are the Mendicant Core Guidelight, just as a very aggressively statted creature with a star 3 equal to the power of artifacts that you control. There's not a lot of artifact spells specifically in this list, but you are generating a lot of artifacts, so I think that it works relatively well. And then it also is bringing in the new mechanic, Start Your Engines, and then whenever you cast an artifact spell, you may pay one if you do copy it. That's the one that's a little bit of a miss, because there's not a whole lot of artifacts to actually copy. Now, we could add in something like the Perilous Snare, which would be something that could be copied by the, if we did get our speed up to 4, and is an artifact, so it has synergies there. And it's your typical O-ring, removing a non-land permanent, and then when you have max speed, you can tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature or vehicle, activate only as a sorcery. So this could also work in the Selesnya Counters build. There's been a kind of Selesnya artifact, Selesnya's enchantments counters space that we'll talk about as well. But I thought these two new cards kind of fit into this shell a little bit better than into the Azorius Simulacrum Synthesizer deck, which also could be a space that got some tools and some worth exploring probably once again. And the next one I want to talk about is the Selesnya Counters build. So this one could be good if we wanted to go up to turn to CMC3 with the Perilous artifact that we just talked about. I decided to keep the curve a little bit lower as a starting place. So this is an archetype that has been around in some form, struggling to really get there. And we've seen Collector's Cage come in, trying to cheese out the White Overlord, and that deck has been performing pretty well. So maybe it's better if I take a little bit more of a mid-range approach with this, but I've wanted to get the low curve one to work. So we've got things like the Botanical Brawler, the Carrion Beast Caller, Patchwork Recruit, the Sky Knight Squire, all of these that have these counter synergies that then you can use like Innkeeper's Talent to put counters on. And then the cards that we got in Aetherdrift that I think are interesting are the District Mascot. Enters with a +1/+1 counter on it. You can put more counters onto it, and then if you remove 2 +1/+1 counters from it, you can destroy target artifact, and whenever this creature attacks while saddled, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So works with the additional counter synergies in the deck, being able to put counters onto your Botanical Brawler on its attack as well. And then we got the Bulwark Ox, and I think this is the card that's really going to change this deck, because this deck has had problems with sweepers. Now, giving something hexproof and indestructible doesn't get around temporary lockdown, so it may still be a problem, and you may need to run something like Get Lost instead of the Invasion of Gobakon to get your creatures back. But whenever this creature's attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on it, so it has those synergies. It's relatively easy to saddle, and then being able to protect your large creature that has all the +1/+1 counters, I think could work quite well. Next up is Mono Red Goblins, and if you were a fan of the channel, you've heard me talk about Mono Red Goblins throughout the weeks. It's a alternative aggro strategy that's more go wide than its counterpart with the Mice Trifecta, and the upside to this is that it's a little bit more resilient to Mono Black and the single point interaction or the removal in Mono Black. And this one also got 2 rares that caught my attention, which were the Burnout Bastronaut is a 1/1 with Menace with Start Your Engines, and you can give the creature +1/+0 until end of turn for 2 colorless, and then at max speed, this creature has double strike. So I think it's an interesting way to be able to play an early evasive creature that then attacks well for a Seer Slicer Goblin, And then later, when you get your max speed, could be a good late game finisher, being able to pump up into a reasonably large size threat, considering this is running 2 Goblin Lords. So even if you're not doing the mana sync ability, it's still going to be coming in as a 3/3 menace double strike if you get the max speed. And this is a good archetype at getting little chip damage in. So I do think this is looking particularly nice. And then Krenko was included in some builds and not in others. Some builds preferring to go for a lower curve. And I think that if we can give Krenko haste, this is I think they're trying to push a little bit more towards giving Krenko haste, and the Howl Squad Heavy, other goblins you control have haste, so this allows us to curve really nicely into Krenko and being able to immediately tap him to get all of the 1/1s. And at the beginning of your combat, you create a 1/1, and then they have to attack, and if you have max speed, you can tap for a ton of mana. So this one also opens up alternative strategies where we could maybe put in some sort of a large mana effect to kind of move towards in the long game. But I think for now, just using something like the Soulstone Sanctuary, which also is a goblin because it's a shapeshifter, could be an interesting way to explore it. And if I'm feeling a little bit rushed right now, it's because I'm trying to get way too much done today. I've got a Commander game I got to get to. So trying to go as quickly as possible. And then last but not least is mono green dinos, and Gruul dinos is usually where we go because of Itzquinth and the 3/2 that gets the power of the other dragon or the other dinosaurs in red. But I've been wanting to get mono green to work, and I think that we got some interesting payoffs in specifically green dinosaurs that maybe we could just ditch the red and stick strictly to a green space. And so we've got mana dorks, so like the Llanowar Elves, the Intrepid Paleontologist, and the Lore Keeper. So I think that's really the pull that I have personally for trying to get the ramp strategy to work in mono green dinos, is that we get access to 2 additional mana dorks. And so this allows us to get to our top end pretty dang fast. Also, Archdruid's Charm, really nice for the mono green space because then it's much easier to cast than in the red-green counterpart. And but we got Regal Imperiosaur, which is the Dino Lord and has a large body, just giving us a 5/4 for 3, just straight up. Is also kind of like the Pugnacious Hammer Skull, is just really big creature, which mono red could struggle to remove. And then we do have like protection with Snakeskin Veil. The Tranquil Frillback I think is relatively well situated for the Dimir and Esper Bounce decks, and the Azorius Reanimator deck that's trying to cheese out the Omniscience. And then we've got the Agonosaur Rex, which is an 8/8 trample for 3 and double pip green. And this is not only is it a good top-end threat, but it also allows you to cycle it, put 2 +1/+1 counters onto a creature, and it gains indestructible. So it's like running additional Snakeskin Veils that can then also be a creature if you need them to be. So I think that really helps kind of enable this as a viable archetype that I want to explore early on in Aetherdrift. Now, I usually spend a fair amount of my time drafting the set before I actually spend any of my wildcards, so I won't be able to check these decks out. If you do check them out, let me know in the comments below. These are brews that have not been playtested. These are just theory crafts, and so the lands might need a little bit of tweaking. They might need some additional tools to make them more specific to the meta. And of course, if you have any ideas about what would fit well into this archetype, please leave a comment below. That's why I do this. I love geeking out about Magic the Gathering. And this Sunday, I'm not sure I'll be doing my meta breakers, but I certainly will be doing my best of 1, best of 3 meta review on Monday to talk about how Aetherdrift has shaken up the meta in the first week. So with that, take care, everybody, and I gotta run. See ya.